So, you love sport. If it's foul play and dirty tactics you like, then check out The Traitors, Uncloaked.
I know it's a game of deception, but it's a game of trust. You have to get people to trust you very quickly.
I'm Ed Gamble. Join me as we discuss all the latest drama from the Traitors' Castle, with exclusive access to the banished and murdered contestants.
No!
I would have never expected him at all.
The Traitors Uncloaked. Listen only on BBC Sounds.
BBC Sounds. Music, radio, podcasts.
Hello, I'm Lewis Irons and welcome to the Scottish Football Podcast, your whistle-stop tour through all the talking points and news in the national game. It's Wednesday, the 24th of January, and coming up today...
Oda with a strike! Oda with a goal! Come back, complete at Tynecastle! Hearts 3, Dundee 2!
From toxic to triumphant at Tynecastle, can anyone catch Hearts in third following a dramatic late win over Dundee?
Keeper comes through, it doesn't get it! And it's a simple goal for Hibs. Big chance here. Nicky Devlin buries it.
We'll also take a look at tonight's action with Hibs hosting Rangers and Aberdeen travelling to St Johnstone, and Scott Brown's back.
You know, listen, I'm his number one fan. Really, everybody knows that, how tight we are, and I'm desperate to see him do well.
Following his appointment as Ayr manager, we'll ask a man who knows him as well as anyone what qualities he'll bring to the table.
This is the Scottish Football Podcast from BBC Sport Scotland.
Well, I'm delighted to say I'm joined by former Hibs and Rangers midfielder Kevin Thomson. Good morning, Kev. How are you?
Morning, Liz. Yeah, all good, thanks. Dodging away.
Good. And BBC Sport reporter Martin Dowden is with us too. Martin, how are you?
Wonderful, thank you, Lewis. I hope you are too.
Thank you. Loads to get through with Kevin and Martin, but first let's quickly run through the latest Scottish football headlines. Hearts came from 2 goals down to beat Dundee 3-2 at Tynecastle and tighten their grip on third place in the Premiership. Scott Brown has vowed to revive a sleeping giant after taking over as Ayr United manager. His appointment came just before the Honest Men secured a vital 2-0 home win over Arbroath last night. Nick Montgomery says both his new signings, Maizan Maolida and Emiliano Marcondes, will be involved against Rangers at Easter Road tonight, provided their paperwork is completed in time. Meanwhile, the Ibrox club will be without Senegal forward Abdallah Sima long term after he picked up a thigh injury at the Africa Cup of Nations. And Craig Levein has challenged his St Johnstone side to bounce back from their shock Scottish Cup exit to Airdrie as they host Aberdeen tonight.
The Scottish Football Podcast.
Okay guys, let's start with last night's action at Tynecastle. Kev, how big a win is that for Hearts, given the nature of that second half, in particular, that comeback?
Yeah, massive, to be honest. Look, to be fair, I fancied them, to be honest, even though I think Tony Dock and Dundee are having a solid season, and I'm not so sure you could use punching above their weight because it'd probably be disrespectful. They will be aiming for that top 6 slot, but I think when you start the season at Dundee, you want to stay away from the danger zone and you want to be quite consistent. But I think on the other side of the coin, you've got the Jambos who probably start the season, the expectation they're trying to get as close to the Old Firm as possible to be competitive in the Cups and probably try and secure that third place position. So listen, I know Nazy really well. I know he's had a bit of flack. He goes flavour of the month, then he has a poor result, and the Jambos seem to turn a wee bit. So he's probably on a hide into nothing a wee bit, Nazy. But I think he's doing a good job. I think he's a young manager. He'll be learning on the job. He'll be making mistakes. He's going through a transfer window. There's a big talking point in Shanklin. I think to come back after being 2-0 down to get the 3 points was a massive result for the Jambos.
Kevin's described that kind of turnaround and the kind of spell that Naismith's had, Martin. I guess last night kind of is a picture of that in 90 minutes, isn't it? He described it initially as a bit of a toxic atmosphere and then the comeback complete. What was the reaction of the managers last night, Martin?
I think the reaction of both managers was spot on. Naismith recognising the first 45 minutes just simply isn't good enough. That's why it was toxic, and that's what you get at Tynecastle, of course. That's why we love that as a stadium. You get passion when it's going well, it's brilliant. When it's not going so well, it's pretty bad for the players, and that's the demands of being a Hearts player and being a player for a big club in any country, really. So toxic is an interesting word that he used, to be fair. I think the fans were reacting to what they were seeing. You're 2-0 down to Dundee at home at half-time. You're going to get that. I would say, though, I saw Dundee against Kilmarnock in the Cup on Saturday, and yeah, they blew it within 3 minutes. They lost both goals in that time. I was quite impressed with them, I have to say, and I wasn't overly surprised that, well, I was surprised they were winning 2-0 to be fair, but they gave Hearts a good game and could have won it. Tony Docherty said they need to be more resilient. I think that's absolutely accurate. They've got a lot of potential within the squad. I think he's recruited well again, but I think he also said they need to learn quick, and that's also what they need to do. We know how quickly things can go from good to bad. They're in a decent position, but a couple of wins will just make them comfortable, and that's what they're looking for.
Kevin, sticking with Hearts, you touched on the kind of, well, Martin touched on the expectation perhaps from fans at times. That third place looks like it could be well within their grasp now in terms of them having a bit of a stranglehold on it. Can you see anybody pushing for that third or catching them at all? Perhaps one of your former clubs, would you expect them to push it a bit?
Well, obviously the Highbies have done a wee bit of business, Lewis, which is going to be interesting to see how these players, if they hit the ground running, if it complements what's already there. I sense a wee bit of frustration within the Highbies, like maybe some players like Aventi maybe playing out of position, maybe the new signings will maybe allow the manager, he's maybe putting square pegs in round holes as such. He likes to play with 3 or 4 attackers, so it'll be interesting to see how obviously they do, because they need to hit the ground running if the Highbies are going to have a say in that kind of third and fourth place, I think. But what I would say is I think the Jambos, to me, rest on, is Shankland going to go? Is he not going to go? That could be a massive factor. But I think if I was a betting man, which I'm no, Lewis, I would put my money on the Jambos to finish third.
But let's turn our attention to tonight's games, guys. Kev, first up, it should be a cracker at Easter Road tonight, shouldn't it? Your 2 former clubs going head-to-head. How do you see that one going tonight?
I think it'll be a hard game. I think Nick Montgomery and his squad will need to look back to when they had the positive result against Celtic and they were hard to beat and, full of energy and really frustrated Celtic, I suppose. I think they're probably going to need to have that type of performance again tonight. Obviously, Boyle being away, having that speed and, being able to play in the counter-attack might not quite be the game plan, because he is the one that's got that blistering speed. Listen, Johan's a fast and tricky player, but I think for me, I see the game panning out as kind of Rangers dominating the ball like they probably will, and I think if Hibs are going to have any success and stifle Rangers, when the big opportunities come, they need to have that quality, but they're going to need to try and have some sort of warrior performance to keep Rangers without knocking on the door and putting the ball in the back of the net. And I think it could be catalyst for the Highbies. I think it comes at a good time. A big game. Packed house. I'd find it hard to see past Rangers, to be honest, to go and potentially win the game. But stranger things have happened, and I certainly know that Clement and his squad will know that it'll be a difficult game, because if the Highbies are in the mood and the place is bouncing, then you just never know.
Couple of personnel questions for you, Martin. The Hibs new faces, do you expect to see them? And of course, what is the latest in the reports about Sima? We heard about that thigh injury. What's the latest there?
Well, starting with Hibs, if the paperwork's done, I think we will see them. I think Nick Montgomery's very keen to get his own players in. These would count as that. Obviously, he's inherited a squad from Lee Johnson. I think that tonight's a big one, actually, for Hibs. They need a big result, in my view. You can see the intent, you can see the style of play they're trying to do, but it just seems a bit hit and miss at the moment. That may be because of injuries, it may be because of players being away, but they could really use a big win. As for Abdallah Sima, I mean, what a loss that is for Rangers. I've seen him a number of times. He's such a threat. He's such a threat when he's not even doing anything, because he has that pace, he worries defenders. It's a massive blow for them. We don't have any update as to exactly what the nature of the injury is as we talk right now this morning. I think that will probably come before or after the game tonight at Easter Road. But what to do for Rangers in the transfer market, because they need to replace him. They've been looking at 2 or 3 players to actually improve the squad. And in this case, they just need somebody in to stand still in a sense and retain a threat.
Yeah. Nearly impossible to replace goals like that as well, though, isn't it, Kevin? And particularly in the winter window, a huge loss, Sima, for Rangers.
Yeah, massive. I kind of agree with Martin. Whenever I've seen him, I just think he's good in the air, he's powerful, he's a good size, he's contributed, not just with his goals, assists, and he's just a threat, I think. But he's also, really valuable for the team, the work that he does. I think Ibona Barisic, Yilmaz, if you were playing with a player like that in front of you, it's music to your ears, really, the work ethic that he's got coming back and, helping the team out without the ball. So he will be. And then you look at people like, Dowell's obviously just come in the media, just went through an operation, another one that's a kind of attacking threat. Roof's obviously had his major injured problem since he's joined the club, really. So he's a frustration. Danilo obviously was the big signing, the one that, spent a lot of money on. There's there's an obvious frustration within the fans when it comes to Dessers. So it's going to be interesting to see how Clermont can manipulate his budget. Is there money there? Is there no money there? They've obviously been linked with a few players. I think if they're going to have a title challenge, they need to bring someone in that can make sure that they can score the goals, because that's going to be paramount if they want to make sure that they can stay on the coattails of Celtic.
The other game, of course, tonight, Martin, St Johnstone Aberdeen. What's the latest from both sides in the build-up to this one? It's a big game for both.
Absolutely, it is a big deal for both, particularly St Johnstone, I feel, after that result against Airdrieonians at the weekend. It's been called a shock. I'm not even sure it is a shock, to be honest, given how both teams have been doing. This is massive. I'm just looking at the table right now. St Johnstone in 10th. They're a point ahead of Ross County. They've played a game more. Livingston obviously providing that cushion because they're a little bit adrift at the moment. For St Johnstone, look, they just need points. It's all about survival, nothing else. They need to stay in the league. I think that's what they were looking for when they brought Craig Levein in, just that experience to ease them away. And, a win can do a lot for them. It could take them up 2-3 positions potentially. But in contrast, they're finding them hard to come by. Aberdeen, again, I'm looking at the table and I just think, wow, they're in 8th. But you then look at the number of games they have in hand. You look at where that could take them if they win all of them, and it's, to be fair, nowhere near Hearts. That's what they should be aiming for. So in a sense, for me, they are underachieving, but they do have the bank of games there. The thing, it's like any team, they need to start winning. They need consistency and they need to climb that table because Aberdeen fans expect them to be challenging for third and nothing less.
Kevin, St Johnstone, obviously, Martin touched on that disappointment. Will that fuel them tonight? Do you feel that cup disappointment?
Yeah, you'd think so. And I'm not so sure it's a shock either. I think Rhys McCabe's done a brilliant job at Airdrie. They play a real good brand of football, and our young, exciting coach that's getting good plaudits, but backing them up. That championship, only just looked at it last night when obviously Ayr got their 3 points last night against Arbroath. It's so tight when you throw Dunfermline's, and a couple of wins can put you straight into the playoffs, and a couple of poor results can put you straight in the dogfight, really. So I think there's plenty of people looking over their shoulder in that championship. I certainly don't think it was a shock. And then for St Johnstone's perspective, Lewis, I just think Craig Levein listen, I know Craig, he was a national manager, I played against his teams. I just think the wins might be hard to come by, but I think they'll do enough. I think they've got enough about them to be robust enough and horrible enough to play against, just to get themselves out of the mire. I think the interesting bit for me is probably which teams finish in the playoffs in the championship. Are any of them going to be good enough to beat the team that finish in the playoffs in the Premier League? I didn't want to do anyone a disservice, but I would say that might be a challenge, albeit you could argue, contradict myself, because Airdrie have just obviously beat St Johnstone, but just over 2 games, I think it might be a wee bit more of a challenge than just a one-off cup game. So listen, I think St Johnstone will be okay, Lewis. I think Craig Levein's got the experience, and I think he's got a robust enough squad to kind of grind out the odd result here or there to just keep them out of trouble.
St Johnstone do have that know-how at the helm, don't they, Martin? And I guess for Aberdeen, looking at them, they've got firepower and quality in a player like Miovski, who certainly could and should probably propel them up the table as over the course of the second half of the campaign.
Well, you'd expect so, but come on, Lewis, you're talking to a sports journalist here. The window's not shut. Will he be there? Who knows? Yeah, just adding a bit of speculation there for it. Yeah, I mean, he's been fantastic for Aberdeen. You have to wonder where they would be without him. That's an interesting thought as well. Yeah, for Aberdeen, they'll be absolutely desperate to hang on to him. He's been prolific and the centre of everything that they do well.
Yeah.
Just quickly, Lou, so in Aberdeen, though, I think it's fair to point out the draw for the Scottish Cup as well gives them a real opportunity. They've just been to the League Cup final. I mean, I think it's fair to say they probably didn't perform in the day as they would have hoped, but they do have the opportunity here to do well in the Scottish Cup as well. And you think Barry Robson might look at that if that pans out and go, well, hang on, what are you looking for if they get a couple of decent results with those games in hand? So it can turn very quickly.
You're listening to the Scottish Football Podcast.
Before we go, guys, of course, a man that Kevin, you know very well, Scott Brown, back in the headlines after getting the gig at Ayr United alongside Stephen Whittaker and his coaching staff. Martin, you can give us the kind of background on this story. It all kind of moved pretty quickly, didn't it?
Yes, it did. I was actually doing the radio sport last Monday when Ayr United put out a statement saying they'd parted ways with Lee Bullen. Also, interestingly, citing online and stadium abuse as well as a sideline. So that was quite interesting. But yeah, I felt for Lee Bullen actually. I think everyone around the club, recognised what he'd done last season. He got them to second by about a goal on that final day into the playoffs. But what an exciting appointment this is. Scott Brown coming in. Kevin can talk about him in a second, knows him very well, of course. But for Scott Brown, I find it very interesting. For me, he did all right at Fleetwood. He got them to the 5th round of the FA Cup. They hadn't ever been to the 4th round. They consolidated in that season, the first season he was there. Results didn't go his way early on. And of course, the nature of the beast at the moment is off he went. Lee Johnson went in and now he's gone as well. So you can have a look at that and form your own opinion. But for Scott Brown, for me, the interesting part of this is him now operating as a manager in Scotland and the scrutiny and pressure that will bring. He's used to it. So I don't think it will be a problem for him. But yeah, it's a really interesting one. It puts Ayr United right on the map. And of course, lo and behold, who are they playing in a few weeks? Rangers at Ibrox. That's going to be fascinating.
Yeah, I'm sure that's going to be a moment that Scott Brown will relish and look forward to. Kev, you know him better than most. How excited will he be to get started, and will that game be on his mind already?
Well, to be fair, I was texting him back and forth last night and he already mentioned that game, so I'm pretty sure he'll know that he'll be in for a warm reception. It'll be fun in games. I'm pretty sure a lot of people will just tune into the game just to see what the initial reaction is probably, but listen, I know him too well. That'll not faze him one bit really. And he'll enjoy it, he'll relish it. And obviously I was watching him from afar last night to see that obviously they got a good result against Arbroath. And I was looking at the table and I actually texted a few of my mates back and forth, and I feel for Lee Bullen. I don't know him that well. I mean, as you spoke about, obviously done really well previous season and then kind of huffed and puffed a wee bit this season, but you never want to see anyone lose their job. But it gives Scott an opportunity. Martin's probably right, the scrutiny being in Scotland is totally different from being at Fleetwood, and people not really maybe bothering their backside about him travelling to all these different stadiums and maybe getting a wee bit of abuse. But I'm pretty sure he'll he's handled it his whole career. I'm not so sure it'll faze him, to be honest. The challenge will be, I think Airdrie have got a game in hand. I'm looking at it just now, 4 points behind playoffs. What an opportunity, really. I actually thought you would think with Lee Bullen losing his job that they were in a real mire and they were really poor and the squad was really underachieving, but you could argue like a couple of results. And I know they're easier said than done, but they ain't going to be too far away. And it's such a tight championship. It's the argument is you could easily be in a relegation battle. But I think it's one that he can get his teeth stuck into. I know Whitty really well, who's obviously taken in. He's been his counterpart. Trust him, he's kind of his lieutenant. I mean, I'll be vouching for them. Hopefully they go on and do a good job. It's a club that I've seen him say in the media that's a bit of a sleeping giant. They've always got big supports. They always travel with big numbers. It's a real passionate area for football, so I'm pretty sure if he can get the team going and he can almost, well, what's the liking for the words? He could represent him within his team. I'm pretty sure their United fans will get behind him and they'll back him. And if there's a wee bit of money there to try and manipulate the squad, seeing as we're in January, I'm pretty sure he'll be keen to try and utilise that. What do you think he'll bring to the role, Kev, that maybe people don't see in terms of his role as a manager? And alongside Whittaker, of course, like who you mentioned, what will they bring as manager and coaches? Well, I think that I read Scotty's quotes last night saying that Whitty's a good foil for him, and everybody sees Scott as the player. It was the hard persona and the driver, the kind of grafter in the middle of the pitch that kind of put himself about, and at times maybe the pantomime villain. I'm not so sure he's like that off the pitch. If you get to know Scott and the type of boy he is, I think he had a game face, he had a personality when he walked on the pitch that he needed for him as an individual, and it worked wonders for him for his whole career. I think when you meet him off the pitch and you get to know him, the type of person he's a bit calmer than you would think. He's still the madman as such, kind of up to all sorts and always a kind of prankster. But I think Whitty being the kind of calm and head and the kind of more quiet one and reserve one, I think they're a good foil. Listen, I'm his number one fan, really. Everybody knows that, how tight we are, and I'm desperate to see him do well. And fingers crossed he can galvanise the squad and he can bring their United fans some success. And listen, outside chances squeezing in the playoffs. So, and then you just never know. It can be in the lap of the gods. So fingers crossed he can do a good job. Absolutely, and it's all eyes in the Championship for many reasons now, but Scott Brown going in there certainly brings a new dimension, doesn't it? But time to wrap things up on the Scottish Football Podcast. Remember, our email address is scottishfootball@bbc.co.uk if you've got any comments or questions for anyone on the podcast. And if you haven't done so already, subscribe and follow the Scottish Football Podcast
so that you don't miss an episode. My thanks to Kevin Thomson and Martin Dowden, and thank you to you for listening.
The winter transfer window is braving the British weather and is wide open once again.
More drama, more twists, more turns.
I am Kay Curd, and every weekday throughout January I'll be joined by Luke Edwards and some of the country's best football journalists to dissect the day's transfer rumours.
From BBC Radio 5 Live, the Transfer Gossip Daily Podcast.
Who will your team buy, sell, loan, or even just be heavily linked with, only to lose out to your rivals?
What will happen next?
Keep up to date with all the comings and goings straight from the rumour mill with the Transfer Gossip Daily Podcast. Listen on BBC Sounds.